How is it going, everyone? Welcome back to Web Dev Junkie. This is Cody Seibert, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to build a Space Invaders game in JavaScript. And we're not going to be building the full Space Invaders game because there's actually quite a lot to it, but we're just going to build like the starting point where you have a couple of aliens, you have a ship that can shoot and move left and right, you have some lives, and you have a score. Let's see if I actually get hit by one of these aliens. Let's see. Nope. Here we go. So if you get hit, you die, and then you get respawned. And that is basically the extent of what we're building. You could obviously spend a lot more time to polish this out and make an actual full Space Invaders. But in this tutorial, we're just going to stick with the basics. All right, so let me just first give you an overview of how the project is set up. First of all, I'm using Parcel, and that's going to be used for kind of building up my bundle locally. And this is a useful tool when you're dealing with a lot of files that need to kind of be like modularized. And we'll see, like, we'll have a bunch of different files for every class, and we kind of import them in other files. Super recommended, especially if you're like doing any type of large project that has more than one file. So we're going to be using Parcel, and that's actually running locally on a terminal. And you can see here it's hosting my HTML here on this page. Secondly, we have our index file, which is referencing a style CSS, and my JavaScript file here. And if I rename this as Space Invaders, save the file, notice that it does automatically refresh my page and update. So that is basically my project setup. I have two images here, an alien and a ship, which we're going to be using. And then we have our index file. So this is where everything is going to start happening. So let's just first start with something basic, right? So in Space Invaders, you have a ship that the player can move left and right, and they can also fire it. So it would make sense to start with some type of ship class or ship functionality, which basically encapsulates drawing a ship and moving the ship around. So let's just go ahead and take an object-oriented approach and make a ship.js file. And inside here, we're going to make a ship class. Okay. So for those who aren't familiar with classes in JavaScript, I hope you are, but this is how you declare a class. And the constructor is used for declaring members of that class when you construct a new class object, I guess you could say. So also in Parcel, you have the ability to do ES6 imports and exports. So I want to export this ship class so that I can import it here as a named import from that ship file, okay? And then finally, we could just construct the ship here, and inside of this constructor, this is where we're going to create a DOM element to kind of render that ship out to the center of the screen down here and give it that ship image that we have inside of this images folder, which is here. Okay, so starting off, how do we take a ship image and render it to the screen somewhere? Well, inside the constructor, we could first create a DOM element. So I could say diff.el, which is going to be our approach for storing elements on these objects. And we're going to say document.create element. We're going to pass it image as its tag, I guess you could say. So this gives us the ability to load in an image. So secondly, we want to set that image, the DOM element's source equal to some image location, right? So one thing that's kind of different with Parcel is that you can actually import the images and use them in your code, so you don't have to hard code image locations. So in this case, I could say import ship image from /images/ship.png. And now I can actually set the source of this DOM element to my image. And then lastly, you need to append that element to your body, right? So if I run all this, we should see that ship image pop up in the top left. So awesome. We were able to display an image. Now we want to center it to the center of the screen, right? So how do we do that? Well, with CSS, we could simply just add a left to it or a top to it to move it around. But unfortunately, the ship needs to have a position of fixed. So right now, if I just play around with this and inspect this element, if I were to go in here and add like left of 200 pixels, it doesn't move, right? That's because the position is not set to fixed right now. So if I say this position fixed, notice that I can actually move and position this ship. So that's kind of the first thing we want to do is we want to be able to do that stuff. So I'm going to say the elements class name is equal to ship. And inside that style, we're going to, or that style sheet, we're just going to go ahead and set that position to fixed here. And that is it. So now when the page reloads, it should have position fixed, and I could simply change the styles left and top to move it around. So again, the original thing we're trying to do is position that ship in the middle of the screen. Okay, so what we want to do is we need to set the X location of our ship object to the width of the screen. So window.inner width divided by 2. And that's the kind of, we're going to be using this to kind of internally keep track of the XY coordinates. But in order to actually make the DOM element move, we need to set that style, right? So I could say this.l.style.left is equal to this.x ex. Okay. So now the ship moved to the center, and that is all based on styles. As you can see up here, it has a style of left 391.5 pixels. So one thing that we also need to do is move it to the bottom of the screen. Using that same approach here, or here, I guess you could say, we're going to do the same thing with y. So this.y is equal to window.inner height, but we want to move it up a couple of pixels. So we'll say 50 pixels. And we're going to do the same approach with setting the style of top equal to this.y of pixels. So now it's going to be positioned 50 pixels up from the bottom of our screen. In fact, maybe I need to do like 80 pixels or something. Cool. So the issue with this approach here is that anytime you change this.x, you need to remember to also update the style. So luckily with object-oriented programming, you could do methods that do this stuff. So if I pull both of this out to a method and have that setX method take in an argument of x, I could simply just set this.x equal to x and then change my style left, right? And I could do the same approach for set y, have that take a y argument, and just run that code here like so. And now in our constructor, we don't have to have this logic. We can instead say this.set x is equal to that, and this.set y, and pass it that. Okay, so this will result in the exact same ship location, but now the methods, we don't have to like worry about resetting the styles every time we change the x and the y. And I think we'll actually see that we do this all over the place. So we're probably going to end up bringing out a parent class that these can extend. So that'd be some good experience with inheritance and extending objects or extending other classes. Okay, so for right now, we have the ship positioned where we want it, but we don't have a way to move it, right? So if we go back to our index file, we can start adding what's called event listeners to our document so that when the user presses A or D, we can move the ship around, right? So in JavaScript, you can do document.add event listener. This might be window.add event listener. I always forget, but we'll find out soon enough. And you can pass it something like an event, right? And there's a bunch of events, as you can see, that are kind of printed out on my screen up here. But the event we're interested in would be key down, I believe. And when a key is actually pressed, it's going to invoke a callback function. This is how add event listener works. If you press the key down, we're going to invoke an event, and I'm going to log that out, right? So here, I'm going to press D, and that's going to print out an event here. So look here, we have the ability to see what the key was pressed, and some other stuff that we don't really care about. But what we want to do is we want to keep track of what keys are down, what keys are up. So I'm going to go ahead and make a map and say A is false, D is false. And we're going to want to shoot at some point, so I'm going to say space is false. So what we can do is simply just say keys. Let me rename this to keys. And I'm going to say event.key is equal to true if you press that key. And we're going to be using this later on to like do some logic with moving the ship and whatnot. But we also want to do a listener for key up. So I could say false here instead. Now the issue with space though is that event.key is actually equal to space. So actually I should probably do something like that. Kind of strange, but hey, it'll work. So now when I press my keys down and up, these things should flash from true and false. And just to kind of demonstrate that, I could print out keys here and print it out here. So let's let that refresh and I'll just press different things. And notice that as I press my different keys, space became true, D became true, A became true here. Just to kind of verify that it's working. So again, what is our goal? Our goal is to move the ship left and right based on what you pressed. So now that we have knowledge of what key is down, we can probably set up some type of interval. So set interval. And we're just going to do every 20 milliseconds right now. There's better ways to do game loops in JavaScript, but I'm just going to do the old-fashioned hacky way. So every 20 milliseconds, we're going to do some type of update logic, right? So in fact, instead of just doing a callback here, let me just do a method called update. So that set interval can just call update every 20 milliseconds. And what we want to do is we want to check if the key of D is down. So I can say if keys of D, then we want to move the ship to the right. Okay, so I'm going to say const ship is equal to ship just to keep track of that ship object. And then I could simply say ship.move right. If we pretend there's a method on that ship class called move right, it's going to call it every time the key of D is pressed. And we don't actually have that method, so let's just make it. And what we want to do is basically get the current X location, increment it by some amount, and then set X again, okay? So we could say, how do we do that, right? So we want to set X, this dot set X of this dot X plus some amount, right? And this some amount can be kind of pulled out to a constant here. So say this dot speed is equal to 2, I guess. And that will be the ship's speed. Every time we call move right, we're just going to increment the X by a speed, right? Which is 2. And then move left will do the complete opposite of that, right? So it'll set the X minus the speed. So let's first verify that we can move right. I'm pressing D and I'm moving to the right, okay? A doesn't do anything yet because we haven't checked for it. So I can say else if he's A, then what do we think we do? We need to move to the left. So we say shift.move left. That's because we just added those two methods so we can invoke them. So now I can move left and right. And that was pretty straightforward to set up, right? I kind of might have gone pretty fast, but again, we just made some methods on this class that modify the X location by a constant. And then we call them here in this update method. So secondly, the ship needs the ability to shoot, right? Actually, before I move on to the shooting, notice that you can go off the screen here, which is not that awesome. Like, I don't think that it should actually happen. So you want to be able to lock the player's position inside of the bounds of the screen or the window. So instead of being able to do this, if keys are down, we probably want to check to make sure that the ship isn't about to go off of the screen. Okay, so what we could do is say if key D is down and the ship's X location is less than the width of the screen, so window.inner width minus some amount. So I'll just say 60. Actually, we should probably do the width of the ship image, which I believe is 50. So we don't want the ship to be able to go off the screen. In fact, it'd probably make more sense to put that to a constant. I'll say this dot ship image width is equal to 50. And then we can use that here and say ship dot ship image width. And that should hopefully lock us into the screen and allow us to go off to the right of the screen. Okay, so that's working. Now the other side, if A is down, what do we need to check for? Well, this one's a lot easier. This is just make sure the ship's X is always greater than 0. Okay, so save that and go back and notice that hopefully this works. We cannot go off to the left of the screen. Cool, so I think the movement of the ship is completely finished. We can move on to something that's a little bit more difficult, which is the ship shooting a projectile or a bullet. So for shooting the bullet, we are going to have to check if the space key is down. And if it is, we could just fire, call a method on the ship called like fire bullet, or we could just create the bullet here. We'll find out. So the first step is top-down approach. If keys of space is pressed, then we want to create a new bullet, which we don't have a bullet class yet. So maybe we should put a comment here, create a bullet. And we could start making a new class called bullet.js. So export class bullet. And that is going to have a constructor that'll probably have very similar things on the ship. Let me just copy all this and then we can kind of like gut what we don't need. So move left and move right, probably don't need. Set X and set Y we probably will need because it has a style and we need to move it. But one thing you'll notice is that like we don't need image. The name would probably be bullet at this point. Let me just go through all this. We don't need any image stuff. All right, so one thing you'll notice between the bullet and the ship is that like there's a ton of logic that's very, very similar, if not identical. Like they both have set X and set Y. They both have DOM elements. They both have the need to append that element to the body. They have classes, and then they call set X when they're constructed, stuff like that. So one thing that is really good and useful in object-oriented programming, or if you're using like composition, you could do composition to do this as well. But since we're going to be using inheritance, we can make a parent class called entity, and bullets and ships could be subclasses of that. So I'm going to make a new file called entity, and I'm going to say export class entity. That's also going to have a constructor. And what the entity class is going to do is basically take those shared methods that the ship and the bullet have in pretty much every other DOM element related game object, and it's going to do all of that tedious logic. So let me get rid of some of this stuff though. The stuff that's shared we need to keep. So, okay. What we should probably do in the entity class is, instead of making an image, because they're not all going to be images, some of them are just going to be CSS style rectangles probably, is we could probably pass in a tag here, and we could probably also pass in a class name and use that class name here and use that tag here. And by default, I think I'm just going to set these equal to a default of div, and the class name could be entity. Okay, so if you don't actually pass these in, they're just going to default to something. And while we're at it, let's just say entity is something that has a position of fixed. And let's see. Entities don't have speeds. Not all entities have speeds, so I'll get rid of that stuff. Let's see. So class name entity. Maybe it makes sense to append that. So it could be entity plus class name, whatever they pass in, which by default is going to be an empty string. All right, so hopefully that makes more sense. While we're here, let's just do a bullet and give it like a background color of red and a width of 2 pixels and a height of 2 pixels. Hopefully that's good. Okay, so going back to the ship and the bullet, it would make sense if they both extend this entity class, right? To be able to reap the benefits of these kind of shared methods. So on the ship, I'm going to say extends entity. And you can actually auto import with VS Code, which is pretty nice. And same with the bullet. I go here, I can say extends entity. I don't know why I auto imported inside my class. That's kind of garbage. Let me move that up and save it. So now what we can do in both these classes is just get rid of the shared code. Be sure we call super. This is how you call your parent components constructor inside a subclass, is you have to call super. So we'll do that in both the bullet and the ship. And now we can actually get rid of all the code that's kind of like already defined in the entity, because the ship and the bullet will have access to set X and set Y. We will also have access to a DOM element that's already appended to the body. Class name. This one might actually be useful if we passed in bullet here. And for set X and set Y, we'll deal with that in just a second. I guess we'll hard code it for that. Hard code it to that for right now, but same with the ship. Let's start gutting some of this stuff. The tag would have to be an image for sure. And we need to make sure we call the source stuff on the ship. Class name. I don't think we even really use a ship class right now, so we probably just get rid of that. But we don't need to set class name for right now. We already got rid of set X and set Y, so I think we should be okay. Let's go back and make sure we can move around still. We can. So our refactoring on the ship at least is still working. Now the second part of this. So we did a bunch of refactoring to make the code a little bit cleaner and more manageable. And that's always good to do. You should always do that when you're coding. Like sometimes we take days, if not weeks, to refactor some parts of systems that we feel like are bad or poorly implemented. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? If you think that there's something wrong with your code and you want to spend an hour or two restructuring or renaming or cleaning it up, it's highly recommended to do that so that your code is cleaner and easier to deal with, because unmanageable code is very, very it slows you down. It can slow your whole team down if your code's not very manageable. But that is completely unrelated to what we're doing. Well, I mean, I guess it kind of is. But what are we trying to do? I'm getting off topic. We're trying to fire a bullet, okay? So when the user presses the space button, we want to create a new bullet. And since there's going to be multiple bullets on the screen, it probably makes sense to keep track of those bullets inside some type of list or an array. So I'm going to declare a bullets array. And when we press the space button, we're going to say push a new bullet. We might need to pass in an X and a Y at some point of the player, but this is a start. And then let's just see what happens. So it should just create something. Bullet is not defined, so I actually have to import this at the top and press enter. You can actually see it's creating a little red dot there. It's kind of hard to see. So let me change that to something that's a little bigger. All right. I'll do 6. Okay. So we got a bullet. It's spawned, but it doesn't move. And it always spawns in the center of the screen. So the first thing we want to do is make it spawn on the ship itself. So it probably makes sense to pass in an X and a Y. Or we could pass in the ship. I guess it doesn't really matter what we do, as long as we are able to set the X and Y of this bullet. So instead of passing this stuff here, I'm going to pass in an X and a Y. So now when we press space, it creates that bullet, and unfortunately it creates it at the left of this ship. So we probably need to take the ship's image width and divide it by 2. So if we go back to here, we want to set it where the ship is, plus the ship's ship image width divided by 2. Okay, so now as I shoot my bullets, they spawn kind of at the tip of the ship. Not really, but that's not the big of a deal. We don't need to fix it. So the second issue is that I click and hold down space, it just spawns an infinite amount of bullets, which is not good. So we want to limit how often a ship can spawn a bullet. So it would probably make sense that instead of creating the bullets here and just pushing them to an array, maybe the ship should be responsible for spawning the bullets, right? There should be, maybe there's like a fire method on the ship, which creates the bullet if it has the ability to. So I'm going to make a fire method here. And what that's going to do is basically, for right now, it's going to create a bullet, which is going to be a function passed in. And take the x and a y here. Okay, so instead of doing bullets.push and all that stuff, we could simply say ship.fire, and we could pass it a create bullet method, which will do kind of this logic here. So create bullet, we have to declare create bullet, takes in an x and a y, and that is going to basically do this logic here. Are we using this anywhere? We're not. So I could just simply do this. Okay, so the reason I'm doing this is the ship shouldn't really be responsible for grabbing that bullets array and pushing stuff into it, right? That's something that's kind of external to the ship's domain or the knowledge of what the ship class should do. So I'm kind of making the method create bullet and sending it into the ship so that the ship can create 1, 2, 3, however many bullets it needs. And it's also knowledgeable of like the X and Y of where that bullet should spawn. So I'm going to say this for all that. And hopefully that still works. I can fire bullets. And again, we want to limit the bullets, right? We should only be able to send a bullet like maybe once every second. So what we want to do is add a boolean to kind of limit that and stop the firing of a bullet. So I'm going to say this.canFire is equal to true by default. And once you fire a bullet, you say this.canFire is equal to false. And then I'm going to say, before I do that though, I need to say if I can fire. So if the ship is able to fire a bullet, then go ahead and fire that bullet. And after a second, we want to set this boolean back to true. So a cheap way to do it, and when I say cheap, I mean like the lazy way to do it, would be just set a timeout here and set that back to true after a second. This is not performant in terms of like JavaScript in real games. You probably want to actually pass in like deltas into an update method and keep track of like how much time has passed and after a second has passed. But all that is so much extra work, especially for this scope of game that we're doing. So I'm just going to do a set timeout and set it back to true after a second. So now if I fire, I'm holding it down right now. All right, the space is being held, and every second it spawns a bullet. Okay, so that kind of achieves the rate limiting that we need for a player in shooting. And the last thing you'll notice is that the bullets don't move, right? So that's kind of the last stage of the bullet class in this particular part of this tutorial. So how do we do that, right? So if we were to go to the bullet, every game tick or every game update, we want to move that bullet up. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a update method and do exactly what I just said, right? I need to set the Y location equal to the current Y location minus some speed, right? Let's just say the speed is 5 right now. Every update, the bullet will move up. And now we just need to make sure we call that on every single bullet. So let's loop through the bullets. So bullets for each bullet, we're gonna call bullet.update. Okay. So now the bullets actually go up. In terms of Space Invaders, I feel like that's pretty fast. So maybe we should do like a 3, maybe. That's pretty good. Okay, so now you'll notice that the bullets are probably just going off the screen forever to infinity. So if you're playing this game for like 5 minutes, you're going to have thousands of bullets still just updating all the time. So what we actually want to do is we want a way to delete those bullets and clean them up from memory after so much time has passed. Or if they've gone off the screen, that's another good way to do it. So going off the screen is kind of a logical concern of the index file at this point, not necessarily the bullet. The bullet should just move, and then if it hits something, damage it, I guess. So what I'm thinking here is inside this for each, after we call bullet update, we check if the bullet is off the screen. So if the Y is less than 0, then we just want to remove that from our bullets list. So bullets.splice, bullets index of bullet. All right, so that's how you remove something from an array in JavaScript. But all that does is remove it from the array. We still have that DOM element. I think we'll still have that DOM element sitting around. So what we want to do is probably have a method on the entity called remove, which says this.l.remove, right? This will clean up the DOM element and probably set it to null as well. That might help. Okay, so when the bullet is trying to be removed, we simply just want to say bullet.remove now. So that'll clean up the DOM element and not pretty much eat up all of our browser's memory. All right, so now for the fun part and the probably most difficult part, the aliens, right? So how do we spawn a bunch of aliens and have them move left to right? And then they also need to fire bullets randomly at some interval from the very bottom alien. So a lot going on there. Let's figure out a good starting point. So I think the first thing would be just try to draw a single alien to the screen. So again, let's make a new alien class, similar to how we did it to like the bullet. And let's just copy, in fact, let's just copy the, I guess let's just copy the bullet and rename some stuff. So rename this to alien, if I could talk, I mean, if I could type. And that doesn't really need a class name at all, so I'll just go ahead and get rid of that. All right, so speed. We'll come back to all this stuff, but basically we want to draw an alien at a certain speed. Okay, oh yeah. So we want to kind of have it be similar to the ship because we do actually have an alien image. So I'm going to import that alien image up here, and that is called alien PNG. And we want to set the tag equal to an image. And then we want to set the source equal to the alien image here. We don't need an update yet, so I'll get rid of that. Inside of the index file, let's just go ahead and create a new alien and see what happens. I should create an alien and draw it, hopefully. Let's see. It doesn't seem like it's doing anything yet. And that is probably because I haven't given it an X and a Y. So I do actually need to give it an X and a Y. I'll give it a X of 100 and Y of 100 and see if that draws anything. Let's see. Alien is not defined. Oh, that's probably because I need to import it up here. So let's import it and see what happens. Awesome. We have a little alien now. Now, we spawned one, right? So we actually need a grid of some amount of aliens, right? So what we could do in programming languages, we have something called 2D arrays. And we could basically create a grid using a 2D array and just create a bunch of alien classes with different X and Y locations, okay? So let us do something similar. So I'm going to say const aliens is equal to an array. And we want to basically create, let's say, 5 rows and 11 columns of aliens. So the first thing we want to do is write a for loop and loop over 5 rows. So we should know what a traditional for loop looks like. Basically, loop until 0 is loop while 0 is less than 5 and keep incrementing row. We want to do the same thing for column. So I'll say let column is equal to 0, column is less than 11, and column plus plus. Now, every time we loop, we want to create a new alien here. And we want to push that into our aliens array. But the X and the Y need to kind of change based on the row and the column. So the Y would obviously have something to do with the row, and the column would have something to do with the X. But we actually need to times that by some amount. So I'll say space them out by 60 pixels and by 60 pixels and see what happens. So that is how you make a grid of aliens. So one thing you'll notice is that they're kind of at the top left, and we kind of want to position them more to the center of the screen. And right now I can't think of a good way to like dynamically do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and add like, I don't know, some padding to all these. Just make them go down by 100 and 100 and see what it looks like. That was a little bit too much. I'll do 40. Yikes. 50. And that could also be 50. Okay, so that looks okay. In fact, I think there's too many aliens. Let's reduce the rows by a little bit and move them in. So let's see if we can get to like something that looks nice. Looks a little bit better. Okay, so one thing you'll notice in Space Invaders is that the aliens move left and right until they hit like a certain point, and then they drop down, and they keep doing that until they pretty much get close to the player. So what we want to do is we want to tell all the aliens to move left or to move right. So they all have like a direction that they need to go in. And I guess when we call update on the aliens, they just move in that direction. So starting off, we could probably do a lot of that logic inside the alien class itself. So I'll say this dot direction is equal to, I don't know, left. And I'll say this will have a method called set direction, which you can change the direction to something else. You know, I'll say set direction right and set direction left. So now you can just call these two methods to change it from right to left. No big deal. So when you create an alien, they're going to start off going left. But right now, we don't really have any way to like move them. So I'm going to add an update method here. And all that's going to do is move them in the direction at a particular constant speed. So I'm going to add that speed back in. 3 is probably really high, so I'm going to do like 0.5. And what we can do here is basically just say if this dot direction is equal to left. And I don't like that we're hard coding the string everywhere, so I'm going to go ahead and just say const left is equal to that, const right is equal to right, and pull those out into constants. But anyway, yeah, if the direction is left, then we need to increment to the left. So I'll say set x is equal to this dot x minus this dot speed. Very similar to how we did it with the player moving left and right. And otherwise, we're probably going in the direction of the right. So I'm just going to say else here. And this should move our aliens left and right when the update method is called. But we don't call the update method yet. So going to our update, we probably want to loop through our aliens now. And so for each alien, we want to call alien.update. All right, so let's see what happens when you run this. Notice that they will go to the left starting off, but then they go off the screen, which is not really a intended behavior. So one way to think about this is like, how do you get them to switch directions when the leftmost alien hits the screen, right? So, because you can shoot bullets at these aliens, and when the bullet hits them, they die. So it turns out if there's only one alien in this far left column, then you need to just keep track of that one and then move back to the right when it hits. All right, so let's go ahead and try to write a method that pretty much loops through all these aliens and finds the one that is furthest to the left in terms of their X location. So this should be a fun method to write. So let's just make a method called get leftmost alien. Okay. And that is going to, we need to figure out a way to return the alien that is furthest to the left. Well, this makes sense using like a min or a max function or iteration over an array. So one thing you can do is use a reduce method. So I'm going to say return aliens dot reduce, and I want the minimum most. So minimum alien, current alien. Okay, so the reduce takes a callback function as the first argument, and then it takes a initial value as a second argument, which is optional. But what we want to do is basically return the minimum alien that we find. So simply say if, let's see, what would we do? Let's see. So inside the callback function, we can return if minimum, say current alien dot x is less than minimum alien dot x, then we want to return the current alien. Otherwise, we return the minimum alien. And I think that's all you do. We might have to write a debug statement and try to figure out if this is actually what we are, like what actually works. So let's try to call this method down here. And we could just simply say if, I'll say const leftmost alien is equal to get leftmost alien. And if leftmost alien dot x is less than, we'll say 30, so 30 pixels from the left of the screen, then we want to go ahead and set all the aliens' direction to the right. So we need to loop through all the aliens again. Actually, I won't do this in the for each method. I'll do this down here. So I'll get the leftmost alien after they all updated and check. If we're really close to the left side of the screen, then we probably want to loop through all the aliens again and set direction right. Let's see. Let's see if this works. Okay, so you see that? It got to the left and they bounce back. So now they're probably going to go off to the right side of the screen in an infinite direction. So we need to do basically the same thing, but instead of leftmost, we do rightmost. So let's just go ahead and copy and paste this and say get rightmost alien. And instead of saying minimum alien, we'll say maximum alien. If the current alien's x is greater than the minimum or maximum alien, then we return it. So let's just go back here. Same logic. Rightmost alien is equal to get the rightmost alien. And let me just say, if there's a better way that anyone can think about doing this stuff, like feel free to let me know, because this is the first thing that came to mind, and I cannot think of a different approach. And we'll just say 60, I guess. I don't know. But basically, if you get really close to the right side of the screen, then you want to set the direction back to the left for every single alien. Okay, so let's try this. In fact, let's just bump up their speed because I'm a little impatient. I don't want to wait for these aliens to take so long. Uh-oh. Screw something up here. If, oh, if it's greater than, my bad. So if they've gone off to the right side of the screen, then we want to move them back to the left. Okay. Working like a charm. So they're going really fast. So let me move that back down to 0. And that should refresh. So one thing that we need to do is when the aliens hit the corner of the screen, we actually want to move them all down some amount. So let's say this alien has a method called move down, and we're going to do some similar logic to like moving left and right, but instead we're going to say set y and move it down this dot speed, I guess. And what we could do is for every alien, when we set the direction to the left, we also want to move it down. Simple enough. Hopefully that works. They move down a little bit. Probably not enough to make it different. So I'm going to say this down speed. It's more of like a distance. It's not really a speed. So I'm going to say down distance is 3 pixels. Now I'll say 5 pixels. I want to see some action. So move down, down distance. When they hit the left side of the screen, they should move down 5 pixels. Cool. It might need to be 10. 5 was kind of subtle. Yeah, I'll do 10. Right now we're just playing around with numbers. You can spend all day modifying numbers when you're dealing with games and stuff, but let's see. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay. So we're doing pretty good. Now what we want to do is if the bullet hits one of the aliens, we want to delete the alien. Okay, and then also probably delete the bullet because it's just going to keep going through the aliens, deleting them all probably. Yeah. So bullet. I'm gonna put the logic inside the bullet itself to check to see if it hits an alien or not. Maybe I'll put it inside the alien. I don't know. That's something I never really understand. Is like, okay, you have a bullet object inside the code. Whose responsibility is it for saying I've collided with another entity? Does the alien say, "Hey, a bullet hit me," or does the bullet say, "Hey, I've hit an alien," or is there some other way to like write that logic? That I don't know. So I'm just gonna pick the actual like alien and say if a bullet hit me, delete the bullet, delete myself. Okay. I guess that's good enough. Alrighty. So as these bullets are moving, we want to check to see if they've collided with any of the aliens. Okay, so how would we do that? In fact, okay, so these are all moving. So basically the alien should have access to the bullets probably. Or a way to get the bullet that it's intersecting with. So I'm just going to pretend like there's a method called like get overlapping bullet. And I'm going to call it. So I'm going to say like say bullet, const bullet is equal to this dot over get overlapping bullet. So this is a method that'll pretty much return you any bullet that's overlapping with you. And it has the potential to return null. So we'll check if the bullet exists. Then we're going to go ahead and remove ourselves and remove the bullet. Okay. This won't really work because we don't have get overlapping bullet doesn't exist yet. But I guess we could kind of pass that in as a dependency to the alien class. So I'm just going to go ahead and pretend like there's a method that's being passed in here. And then inside of this index, let's just go ahead and declare a method called that. So what this method needs to do is take an entity, I guess, and tell you if it's overlapping with any bullets. In fact, this should probably be going after you declare the bullets array. I don't know. I don't know if it really matters. But anyway, so we're going to loop through every bullet and return the one that's potentially overlapping. So for let bullet of bullets, if bullet is overlapping with the entity, so is overlapping entity in the bullet. We haven't created is overlapping, so I need to figure that out. If they're overlapping, then basically just return the bullet. Otherwise, we're going to return null. And again, the alien constructor needed that. So let's just go ahead and pass that in here. And what else can we do? Is overlapping was spelled incorrectly. So we need a method called is overlapping. How much battery do I got left? 90%. Should probably plug in. Okay, so this one, I'm going to actually go to Stack Overflow. Check if two DOM elements overlap. I found this on Stack Overflow before. They got some logic that you can use. Here. So I could just say L1, L2, const rect1 is equal to L1 dot. And they said that you should be using get bounding client rect. So there's a method on DOM elements that gives you a rectangle. It gives you like the dimensions and the positions of your different elements. And I guess you could just use that and then use this logic that I found in Stack Overflow. Basically checks if the sides of the rectangles are like overlapping each other. So we could be using this, and these are actually entities. So entity 1 and entity 2, we need to check the EL, because that's the actual DOM element that's attached to the entity. Anyway, we wrote a bunch of code. Don't know if it's going to work. So let us put a debugger. So this should stop in the debugger if we actually had a bullet intersect and it crashed. So let's check out what happened. That was pretty cool. And I get property L of undefined, so I'm probably not passing something. Put the debugger there and see what's going on. So entity 1 and entity 1 is undefined. Entity 2 is the bullet. So is get overlapping bullet. Oh, I know why. We didn't pass this. We want to check if the current alien is intersecting with one of those bullets. And if they are, then we can start removing some stuff. So let's see. Boom. So now it's going to run. We actually saw that the bullet intersected with the alien. And if we run through this, it should remove the alien and then it should remove the bullet. But then let's see. It crashes because we still have references to the alien and the bullet inside of our index file, but the DOM elements no longer exist. So it's not enough to just say this dot remove and bullet dot remove. We need to go back to the index and make sure we remove those bullets and those aliens from the aliens array and the bullets array. So I guess what would make sense is pass in some more methods into the alien so it can properly clean up the aliens and the bullets. So I'm just going to say const remove alien. And that's going to take in a alien, I guess. Oops. And we can simply say aliens.splice aliens.index of alien, like we did earlier to get rid of the aliens from the array, and then call alien.remove. So now that's something that we're going to pass in to the alien constructor itself and keep track of it. And then we can call it here instead. So I'll say this.remove alien, and I'll pass it this. And then we need to do the same thing with the bullet, I think. So I'll say remove bullet, bullets, let's see, bullet.remove. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to pass that to the new alien as well. And we can call that this.remove bullet. And set that up here. I don't know if this is a good approach either, but I mean, I guess it works. Now if we fire it, it removed the bullet, it removed the alien, and it did not crash my game. So I think that approach works pretty well for right now. All right, so the next thing I want to work on is the score label that's up here. So in Space Invaders, there's typically like a score that prints out. And every time you kill one of these little aliens, your score increments by like 10 or 20 or something. I don't know exactly how it works, but that's what we're going to try to add in. So again, we need some type of DOM element to display some text, and we need to dynamically update that when an alien dies. So we go to logic where an alien dies. It would be here. And what we should probably do is we could either say like add to score, like call a method that increments the score here, or we could kind of tack that logic onto the remove alien function. I think it'd make more sense to just tack it, like create a new method. So I'm going to say this. I'm going to pretend there's a method that is passed in the constructor called add to score, and we're going to cache that to keep track of it so that we can call it later. So again, the alien constructor now takes a dependency called add to score, and we are going to just basically invoke that whenever an alien gets removed. So I'm going to add 20 points. And I don't like hard coding stuff, so let me go up here and say points per kill is 20. So go back down here and set that instead of a magic number, add to score 20. Okay, so now we need to actually make sure that when we create a new alien, we pass in a method called add to score. And we don't actually have a method called add to score yet, so let's just go ahead and add one. I'll say const add to score. And this will take an amount, right? This is some amount that we have to increment by. And I'll say this dot score plus equals amount. And we will keep track of score and set it equal to 0. So now when we kill aliens, hopefully it crashes. Score of undefined alien.add score. Oh, yeah, I don't need this there. So I'm just trying to keep track of like a global variable up here and increment it. So let's see if that actually works. Okay, so if I were to put a breakpoint, notice that score is 20 and we're going to add 20. Click next, score becomes 40. Oops. If I hover over score, it says 40. Okay, so that's working. But we need a way to actually like display a score somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new score entity/class, and following the approach of, just take the bullet class, I guess. So we'll make a class that has a constructor, and that takes in probably nothing, but it calls super. It's going to be a div by default. We need to position it somewhere. So I'll say this dot set x, and I'll set that to window dot enter with divided by 2, so it's in the middle of the screen. And then this dot set y can be 20 pixels from the top. So we got a score class. We could probably import it up here now. So import score from score and invoke it somewhere. I guess I gotta say const score GUI is equal to new score. Let's see. So by doing that, we should, let me get rid of this breakpoint. I don't know why this is paused here. So somewhere on the screen, there should now be an element that can be used to keep track of the score, and here it is. Let's see. It's right here. Doesn't have any text or anything, so that's what we actually need to do. What is this Taku preview? Let's delete that. So let's actually add a method to this class so we can update the scores text on the screen. So I'm going to say set text. You know what? Not set text, set score. So this score thing should actually hold the score. So I'm actually going to set the score here, and set score is going to just simply, you know what? Let me refactor this more. Add to score. I'm going to take an amount, and all that logic for incrementing the score is going to live inside this component instead. And when we add to score, we simply just need to refresh the inner text of our element to say score this dot score. And we need to, I think, call that off the bat here. It's kind of hacky, so let me make a method called refresh text, which is going to call this method, and instead of calling this everywhere, I can say this dot refresh text. All right, so hopefully nothing's showing up because I think the text is black. So I'm just going to say by default all the text color is white. Okay, so now we have score of 0 printing out here. But it probably won't increment yet because remember we had this like hard-coded add to score method, but instead when an alien kills, or when a bullet kills an alien, what we need to do, where's that add to score, is instead of having the score here, we should probably call the add to score that's on the GUI component. Okay, so I'll delete that stuff. And down here where it says add to score, we should be able to set the equal to the score GUI dot add to score. Hopefully this works. I think it should. Refresh text is not a function. So I think I encountered this in the past, but for some reason you have to wrap this in an anonymous function because of how scoping is working. So if I do that, this should hopefully work now. Okay, so the score is going up. Cool, so we implemented the score. It wasn't too hard to do. Got a score component that keeps track of a score, a method that can increment it, and then a helper method that kind of refreshes the text as the score updates. All right, so the last two things are like the player's lives, which we can't really do until we have the ability to get hurt, right? So we need these aliens to shoot bullets down at us, and if we get hit by a bullet, we're going to remove our lives. We can start with that, or we could start with showing the lives. Since we're on the same, since we just did the score, it'd be pretty easy just to do the lives down here. So let's just make another component called lives. And that is going to be pretty similar to score. But instead of a set score, you're going to have a lives. That's going to be 3. It's going to be at the bottom of the screen, minus some amount, I guess 20. And we could say remove a life, and that can just decrement lives by that much. And then we're going to do a refresh text, and it's going to just print out a heart, which I think there's a way to get a heart text. So let's just go ahead and go here and copy the first heart that we see. Oh, there's the heart. Awesome. Okay, so but if we do this, let's say the person has like, let me same up here. Let me just say lives GUI equals the new lives, and we got to import it. All right, so we have a heart that prints out down here, but remember we had 3 lives starting off. So what we need to do is repeat this 3 times, depending on the number of lives that the score component has. So one way to do it is you just make an array that has the length of how many lives there are. I will say this dot lives, and I could fill it with hearts. And then I could probably join it with spaces, I guess. Sorry, it's my kid in the background. Okay, so now we have lives printing out down at the bottom, and I think we just would have to call remove a life from the bullet or the ship class whenever the ship gets hurt. So the next thing is we need to have these ships that are on the bottom row fire bullets randomly on a certain interval, and those bullets go down instead of up, and if they hit the player, we're going to hurt and remove a life. And then probably hide the player for a second and then spawn them back. So this is probably the most complicated part of all this stuff. At least it sounds like it is. So starting off, what would we need to do? Well, how do we find out the very bottom alien of all of these aliens? Well, we could probably sort by the Y, and that'll give us like an order of Y from minimum to maximum, but that doesn't really tell us how many aliens are left and if they're on the bottom row. So another approach is we could use that 2D grid, like use a 2D array, and then loop over every column and go up from bottom to top, row by row, until we find an alien, keep track of it, and then we could just pick one at random after we found all the aliens, because we have 4 here, and then we have one that's way up here that should be able to fire, and we have this one and that one. We kind of have to go down or go up the rows for each column and find which alien. So we don't have a way of keeping track of the aliens right now. If I go to we just have a single flat array of aliens. But what we should probably make is a grid. So aliens grid. And we need to just basically make a 2D array of all this stuff. So I'm going to say const aliens column is equal to this. Let's see, hold on. Am I doing this right? Yeah, I think so. So we're going to push the alien into the aliens column. And at the end, we can say aliens grid dot push aliens column. So that should give us a 2D array of aliens. If I were to console log this and go back, let's see what prints out. We got a length. We got 5 rows, and each row has 9 aliens. So I think we can work off of that. So again, what we need to do is find the bottom alien of every column. So let's write a method called like get bottom aliens. And this one is going to basically do a 2D loop that loops over every column and goes up the rows one by one. So I could just say let column equal 0 while column is less than, what was our max column? I think we hard coded like 9 and stuff. Yeah, 9 and 5. So these are magic numbers. So I'm going to go up here and say like alien rows is 5, const alien columns is 9, and I'm going to use those instead of hard coding those numbers. Alien rows. Is that what I called it? Yeah. And so we could pretty much loop over those columns and rows again using those constants. So we loop over every column, but then we need to loop over the rows. So let row is equal to alien rows minus 1, while row is greater than equal to 0, row minus minus. Okay, so kind of going up the rows instead of down the rows. And then we are going to say if alien's grid of row column is defined, then we want to keep track of the aliens. So I'm going to say have an array called bottom aliens here, and we're going to basically push in the alien that we found, if there is one, and then return that at the end. Okay, so hopefully this will give us all the bottom aliens. We can test that out here and just call it. And right now it should give us, it gave us 45 aliens. Okay, I need to return, right? After we found the bottom alien of that column, so when we found like this one, we break out and we need to go to the next column. So I could just simply say continue here. Or, yeah, continue? No, break. We need to break out, right? So break out of this loop, right? That's what the break keyword does. It breaks out of the loop, and then the next loop will start running. So we should have 9, because we have 9 columns, and each one should have a y direction that's pretty low. So 300. That sounds right. I guess we'll find out, right? But I think this is working. But now we want a random one, right? So I think we're gonna say get random alien, which is gonna take in a aliens list and basically just return us a random alien. So we could say return aliens list and give me a random index. Like I say parse int of math.random times aliens list of length. This is a little trick of how do you get a random index of an array. Okay, so basically give me the length times it by a random number, parse it as an int, and then you'll get back a random thing. Okay, so now that we have those two methods, what we want to do is basically every, let's say 2 or 3 seconds, we want to have that bottom random alien fire a bullet. So I could say set interval. I'll make a method called like aliens fire bullet. And that's going to basically get the bottom aliens. And then we need to grab a random one from that. So I'm going to say random alien. And fire bullet from random alien. We got to figure out how to do that. So again, this should happen every 2 to 3 seconds. So I'm just going to call that, and I'm going to set an interval every 3 seconds to fire a bullet. And what we could do to fire a bullet from random alien, basically we have a create bullet method that we can call. It takes an x, y, and that's it. But we could pretty much just, I guess we could modify this a little bit and say is alien. And we could have the bullet change its behavior if it's an alien bullet. So I will just default this to false. And up here where we do the set interval, we could just create a bullet, give it an x of random alien.x, give it a y of random alien.y, and is alien will be true this time. Alright, so let's see if this actually does something. So it's firing bullets, but it's actually killing the alien itself, which It's a start, but it's not the right logic. So again, the current boolean, the current bullet doesn't really have a concept of if it's an alien or not. So I'm going to say is alien up here, and I'm going to just keep track of that, and we can change the direction of the bullet based on if it's an alien or not. So first of all, for every time it updates, if it's an alien, then we want to go down. So the speed will be positive. And if it is not an alien, we want to go up every time it updates. So the bullet will go up or down depending on if the bullet is an alien bullet or not. And secondly, we don't want the bullets fired by an alien to kill its own self. So if we have a bullet and the bullet is not from an alien, then we kill it. All right, so only the human bullets should be able to kill the aliens. So let's see. So it looks like it's spawning the bullets way up here for some reason. I'm not sure why. This takes an XY and is alien, and we are setting a random alien X and Y. So let us put a debugger here and figure out what's going on. All right, so random alien has an X of 114 and a Y of 270. And when we call create bullet, it goes down here. It's going to create a bullet with let me dive into here. So X is again 114, Y is that. Let me keep diving in. Oops, I made a bullet. Hmm. So there's something wrong with the Y, the Y. I'm not sure why it's not. Okay, let's see. The top is always set to 3 pixels. That's kind of strange. Oh, let me just wrap these in parentheses. I think there's something going on with like adding 2 Boolean ternary. Okay, so there we go. So actually this is probably not good to do. I'm gonna do I'm gonna say dy, so like the change in the y direction is equal to that, and I'm gonna add it to that. That's probably a cleaner way to do that. So now the bullets are actually firing from the bottom aliens. They're a little bit off, like they're firing from the top left corner. So what we could do here is just add a little bit of, I don't know, 15 pixels and also 33 pixels. These are kind of magic numbers. It's the width and the height of the alien image. But I'm just going to keep it hacky for right now because I want to wrap up this tutorial. So I can fire bullets, kill aliens. And when the bullets hit me, though, I don't think they're going to kill me yet, right? They just go right through me. So if I go back to the ship class, oops, ship.js, we basically want to do a similar approach to the alien, where if a bullet has hit us in our update method, where we don't actually have an update method yet, so let me add one. So if a bullet hits us and it is an alien bullet, then I want to probably kill myself and do some other stuff. So kill ship and some other stuff, but we're not calling update on that yet. So let's just go to our update method here, and I want to say ship.update. And we don't have a way to remove our lives. So if I go to where we say new ship, I want to pass the method which was called remove life. And I'll do this dot remove life. So now the ship constructor should probably take that in, right? So I'm going to take that method in. The ship will keep track of that method, and then we can call that method down here. So this dot remove life. Okay, so let's see what happens if we get hit by a bullet. It should remove one of these hearts if, oh, this one needs to be also passed in. So let's see. This dot get overlapping bullet is a dependency that we should pass into the ship. So if I do that, all right, so if I get hit, it crashes because live's GUI remove life is not a function because I called it to remove a life. I'm going to call it remove life. And let's see what happens if we get hit by a bullet this time. Nothing. Cool. So it didn't remove a life and it didn't kill the bullet. So I think we also need the method create remove bullet. So I think there's like a remove bullet method that we should probably pass to the ship as well. So new ship, we want to be able to remove bullets from when the ship is hit by the bullet. And when we get hit, we'll just say this dot remove bullet and call it. Hopefully the bullet at least disappears when it hits me. If not, there's probably something else going on. This dot remove bullet is not a function. Oh, I need to keep track of it here. All right, moment of truth. Will it work? Will it work? Will it work? Huh. Well, bullet dot remove did not work for some reason. Oh, because I need to actually pass in the bullet. Sometimes I wish I used TypeScript. It'd probably make it easier to know when I'm not passing the correct things. All right, so I got hit by the bullet and the bullet got removed, but the life is not changing. So let's figure out why this is not actually invoking the lives GUI. So remove life should decrement lives by 1. Okay, there we go. Again, another issue where if I had TypeScript, this probably would have told me, hey, this dot live does not exist. But oh well. Okay, so when I get hit, the hearts drop down here, as you can see. But we can still move, we can still play, which doesn't really make sense. So what I'm going to do is just add another boolean called this dot is alive is equal to true. When you get hit, it's going to set it to false. We're going to set a timeout for 3 seconds to set it back to true. So after 3 seconds, you come back, and then we also want to, you know what? I'm gonna add a kill method and put this stuff in a kill method. So I'll say this dot kill. It does that same logic, but then we also want to modify the style of the ship and set it equal to 0. And then when you become alive, set it back to 1. Alright, so let's see what happens if we get hit. So the ship is gone, but I can still fire bullets, which is kind of like a bug. So what I want to do now is, in the fire method, if you can fire and you're alive, then you could actually fire bullets. And then again, with move left and move right, technically you can move the ship when you're dead, but I guess it doesn't matter too much. I guess you don't want to be able to hit by bullets when you're alive. So if you're alive, you can only be hit by the bullets. I'll just add a check here. If this dot is alive, so if we're not alive, just return. Can't move if you're not alive. And then when you respawn, you want to probably set the position back to this. So I'm actually going to make a method called spawn here. And then I could say this dot spawn. And then down here, I'll say this dot spawn. In fact, I could probably put both of those inside of this dot spawn. I thought I got hit by a bullet, but it didn't do anything. Oh, this side is alive. And my kid is talking. Alright, so let's see. If I get hit by this bullet... Okay, let me try another bullet. There we go. Hit by the bullet. I lose life. I can't fire. I can't move. I spawn back into the center of the screen. Okay, so I mean... I think that pretty much wraps up Space Invaders. I can't... There's probably bugs. Like, I'm pretty sure if I die and lose all 3 lives, the game just starts breaking because there's probably, like, index out of bounds issues and whatnot. Actually, let's make sure that it does fire from the correct... Okay, so I think there is one bug that I forgot to mention, is that when we remove aliens, we need to remove it from the aliens grid as well. So what I could do is just loop over the aliens grid. And also loop over the columns. So let's see. Let me do this. Oops. Okay, let me just do this the old-fashioned way. So loop over the rows. Loop over the columns. I'm about to finish up this tutorial, so ignore my kid for a second. And then every time we remove an alien, we just need to basically check if the alien grid is equal to the alien we're trying to remove. And then we just set this equal to null. So I think that should clear out the correct index. Okay, so that basically wraps up my tutorial. This code is pasted on GitHub, on my YouTube GitHub, so feel free to check it out. There's a lot of stuff that I could have added to this and continue building upon. Maybe I'll do a part 2 if people are interested, but I highly doubt anyone has made it this far in this tutorial. So if you have, I applaud you. If you have any comments or suggestions as to how I kind of structured this code, let me know. Like, this index file is getting a little big. I could probably split it up into other files or methods or something. Like, all this could probably be in like an input manager's file. We have alien logic and bullet logic and ship logic. That's all in here that could be moved out to other files probably as well. But I mean, hopefully this was a good like overview or introduction of how you can build Space Invaders. As you can see, building a simple game can actually get pretty complex pretty quick. So yeah, that wraps it up. I wish you luck. Thank you for watching. Again, this is Web Dev Junkie, and my name is Cody Seibert.